I recently sat down with acclaimed filmmaker Hemal Trivedi for the 25th New York Indian Film Festival to discuss her moving new documentary, Where the Light Enters You. The film, co-directed with Matt Alesevich, explores a powerful cross-cultural sisterhood forged through grief and hope. Hemal opened up about her journey from Mumbai to the global stage and the deep trust that shaped this story. Stay tuned for the full interview coming soon on ITV Gold.
પૈસા અપી કરવા જાય ત્યારે દુખે છચરે
થઈ જાય છે 10-15 દાડ થઈ જાય આઈસ્ક્રીમ ખાતું સાથી
એની દવા આઈસ્ક્રીમ છે. When I was young, my mom passed away in India. It was a car accident and she wasn't taken to the hospital on time. I blamed it on the system. She didn't need to die that day. They went to the doctor, got admitted, and then they came to tell them that leave the hospital, go to a civil hospital or a government hospital because you can't afford. I know. He died because he didn't have money. And we are such horrible species that we let him die because he didn't have money.
પપ્પા ટેન્શન કરતી ને તો આ ધબગાર વધી જાતા સવા સડી જાતા બહુ જને ટેન્શન કરતા.
અમારા સમાજમાં કેવું કહું છોકરીઓ ના ભણે એવું બધા અમારા લોકો કહેવાય છે જેટલી મોટી તમે બહુ ભણાવશો તો કોઈ છોકરીના લગ્ન થોડી કરશે. તમારા માટે નેકલેસ વેકલેસ બધું ભણે.
મારે નેકલેસ નહીં જોઈતું. I want you to go to school. You understand you cannot fill your own void, but then you try to fill other people's voids.
પછી બહુ સરસ હોય ને ઉલાલા.
And it makes you happy. I am Farida and Farida is me.
Okay. Where the Light Enters You centers on an unexpected sisterhood between a New York med student and a girl from a nomadic tribe in India. What drew you to this particular story and how did it evolve over time?
So this was complete, I would say, serendipity. So my co-director, Matt Alesevich, he was drawn to medical missions in India, and he used to volunteer at medical missions in India. So he used to go with a bunch of Indian American doctors who would go back to India in rural and provide free rural healthcare. In one of those camps, he came across Annie, who is our protagonist, and he came across Annie, but he also came across a lot of doctors. And then he came to me because he wanted to edit a fundraising sizzle at that time. And I had just gotten out of my maternity leave. So I had just given birth. My son was, I think, 1 year old. So I asked him, are you, and I was like, I really thought that he's one of those filmmakers, Gora filmmaker who goes to India and wants to tell a story about poor people. I mean, a lot of people do that, it's very, very common. So I was like, okay, but I was like, do you have money to edit the sizzle? And he said, sure, he did. And so I was like, okay. So I edited the sizzle, and editing sizzles is it's second nature to me. I can edit so easily because I've been an editor for such a long period of time. So I edited a sizzle, and he was able to raise money through that. And I was very surprised. But he was successful. He's very good at that, actually. And then he kept, then he had story questions. And I'm like, he was like, what should I do with this? What should I do with that? And then I started looking at the footage even more closely, and I was drawn to Annie. Annie wasn't even a primary character at that time. Annie was like a secondary or a tertiary character. But I was like, Matt, you need to go deeper. And, you know, it's like Annie is somebody who is so authentic and so real, and she is a work in progress. She's trying to figure out. In Annie, I saw a lot of my journey. Like, you know, she was this person, healthcare worker, who was in search of identity, who was in search of meaning and purpose in life, and she wanted to know how she should be investing her time in her life. And I was like, she's your character, because, you know, everything. I know there is a lot of poverty, there are a lot of poor people who need help, but that's not the story. The story is, how do you find meaning in your life? And so we kept following Annie. And I'm so happy that Matt, you know, like Matt was so receptive. Because there's a lot of like resistance otherwise. I've seen a lot of resistance. And Matt was so receptive to that. And then we collaborated. And then we started collaborating at a very one-on-one level, in the sense we were co-collaborators, and we were shaping the story together. And that's when, you know, we were like, okay, we'll be co-directors.
And you traveled to India.
I traveled to India. So I traveled to India with Annie, and that's where I saw Farida. And Farida was this, you know, girl from the Mir tribe, Mir community. Like, so Farida used to go to school. Farida was in 9th grade when she lost her father. And she was the only girl from her community who was going to the school. And her father was a patriarch who actually supported women's education. So he was an outlier when it came to the community. And, you know, when after the patriarch was gone, the entire community was against Farida going to school. So Annie made it her mission to ensure that Farida goes to school. And, you know, that it kind of became that story. And then until last year, we were like, you know, it had a happy ending where Farida goes back to school, all the problems are solved, Annie's a savior, but then Farida got married. And so we changed the ending to the current ending, where at the end of the film, Farida gets married, and then Annie realizes that there's no magic wand to change. Change is an incremental thing that happens over generations, and it's going to take her decades, and she'll have to stay put in this community, and will have to relinquish a lot of her life and a lot of her passion, so that she can make this community to what she wants it to be. And it just doesn't happen overnight. There are so many strong forces like patriarchy, class system, caste system, religion, politics.
But she's too young, you know. She also wants to focus on her own life and her own dreams.
But, you know, she actually got inspired by this. And that's what it is. She found her purpose. She found her grounding. And she also found her philanthropic purpose, right? Like having, like, you know, for example, with how Barbara Koppel's documentary grounded me. And I found a purpose. It's not like I stopped living life just because I made documentaries. I had my husband, I had my kids, I had everything. But this kind of grounded me. And this particular incident grounded her. And she found purpose. And so that's why we called it Where the Light Enters You, because, you know, you cannot control where the light enters you. Light enters you at the most unlikeliest places in circumstances that are beyond your control.
This year's NYIFF is a celebration of both legacy and emerging voices. How does it feel to have your film featured in this milestone edition?
I think it's fantastic.